Okay, so today we are going to learn how we can process a file. So we have talked about multiple ways. We have talked about uh, if you want to process anything, we require a machine, right? So let's say you have a client requirement. Okay, I will give you a scenario, and you have to give me the solution first. Okay, think of a solution. That what can be the solution, and what can you do apart from the traditional way. So you have a client requirement where they are sending a file, okay, and they want to process this file in such a way that they need to drop some column from the file. So you can ask the client that what type of file it is. Can you show the data? So I will show you the data. So this is the file. It's in your project folder. You can go and check. So this is your data. Okay, this is your data where the client said that they are going to there is a requirement where they need to drop couple of columns. Drop means they need to delete this couple of columns. Apart from that, the file should be as it is. Okay, that means कि ये जो फाइल है उसमें से करीबन मेरे पास 30+ कॉलम्स हो गए या 31 कॉलम्स है, राइट? एंड आउट ऑफ दैट यू हैव टू डिलीट कपल ऑफ कॉलम्स और बाकी सब एज इट इज होना चाहिए. मींस इफ आई डू राइट क्लिक एंड डिलीट, यप, हो गया. तो अब देखो 27 बचे. Now which column? That will be given by client. Okay, but apart from that the file should be as it is. Now you will say, sir, we can do in Excel. No, okay, we can't do Excel because the file right now this is a small file. No, every file will not open in Excel, and it you can't do manual processing, right? It should be automated way. So what you can do? So simple. You know that you have to delete a file. You have to delete a couple of column from a file. So write a Python code. Okay, write a Python code which will take your file as an input and it will delete that columns and create another file. That's a output file. Simple. Python code, Java code, any language you want, you can write. Okay. Now I'm telling this as a clean output. Means there was some problem with that couple of columns. Because of that, the client want that columns to be deleted. It can be junk character, it can be uh, exposed data, anything. But your primary goal is to delete that columns. Now, how do you know that which columns needs to be deleted? So the client said that they are going to send a config file. In this config file, they are going to send the name of the header. Okay, or column name. This column name should be deleted. So you can see in this config file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns are there, and the same column should be present in the your file. Now whatever the column name is present in this file, let's say tail number. So if you search here tail number, yep, this is a column you need to drop, and the next column is cancel reason, cancellation reason. So these are the columns which you need to drop. Okay, cancel yeah, cancel reason. These are the columns you need to drop. from your file. Okay, this is a client requirement and you need to provide a solution. So here is a config file, right? Now, one suggestion I have given that you can write a Python code. Now, you have to design an architect, you have to design a solution for the client in AWS where the client needs to clear the file. Now, as a data engineer, as a data architect, what are the questions you will ask and what are the designs or application you are going to use, right? So, the first question should be where the files will come. Okay, in if you are talking about cloud, if you are talking about AWS specifically, where you will receive the file or where you want the file to be available. What is the storage in S3 in AWS? It is a S3 bucket. Okay, so you will ask the client that they are going to send the file in S3 or not, or what is their strategy. So let's say the client agree that they are going to send your file in one of your bucket. Great. Then how many files will be sent? What is the quantity of the file? So they are saying that there can be a random number of file. There is no specific number, but on average, there will be 10 file per hour. Let's say 10 file per hour. Okay. Next question should be uh, how big the file size will be. How big the file size? So they said the file size can be maximum. It will be maximum size will be 500 MB. Okay, these are the question you should ask the client. Next question, that how fast do you want the file to be available? Okay, how fast or uh, what is the timeline or threshold time that you need the file to be available? That means if the file has arrived in my bucket, maximum what they can how much time they can wait for file to clean. Okay, means if the file is arrived in the morning, can I process in evening or can I process next day? Can I wait for 6 hours? Can client wait for couple of hours before the file is available? So the client said that they are okay, but they want that file to be as fast as possible. Okay, or near to real time. Okay, these are the questions you should ask the client, or any if you are working on any project, you should ask this type of questions. Okay, now these are the few questions which whenever a client or any requirement comes to me, I generally think of. Now, as per data engineer, as per your knowledge, what are the steps you will take to process the user data? If you are a data engineer, so I have given an example. I have already given you an example that, or I have given you I have already given you the solution that have to create a Python code. Okay, that's good. Now you have written a Python code which is converting the or cleaning the code. But where you are going to run your file in S3? So what you required? You required a memory to process the data. That that means you require a computer. Now, what are the application available in the cloud to run to provide the computer? Where you will find it? Tell me. What is a service where you get a computer? It's EC2 machine, okay, EMR, then you have Lambda, then you have container, okay, and there are other services as well, okay. These are the list of services you can use to for your computing power. Now, the best and the fa- good is EC2. The simplest solution is always EC2. Okay, the is the simplest and easiest way is to use EC2 machine. Okay, so let's think this is your S3 bucket. I have spin up an EC2 machine. I have uploaded my Python code in this EC2 machine and I will run the code. So what it will do? It will pick up the file one by one from S3 and it will clean the code and it will write back the code. Now you have to ask the client where they want the file. Okay, so client will give you the location where they want the data. So right now for simplicity, I'm assuming they are asking the file in another S3 bucket. Okay, so this is output bucket. Okay, this is your output bucket. So this is right now you're doing. But now client said that if you are providing this solution, the client will ask you that what is the cost of EC2 machine to process the file and how fast file will process. So here you can see the as there is no proper timing when the client will send the data. Okay, as the client didn't specify at what particular time the data will be sent to you, you need to run your EC2 machine 24 cross 7, right? Did client specify at what time they are going to send the data? No. Let's say if a client has asked you that they are going to send the data at 8 p.m. between 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay. So in that case, you could have scheduled your EC2 machine which will be running at 10 p.m. for 10 p.m. and you could have processed the file. But they didn't specify. They said that throughout the day they are going to send the data. They're going to send the data throughout the day. That means you have to run EC2 machine 24 cross 7. Okay, fine. Now, when you further, if you check, client after giving the solution, client wants you to save the money. Clients want you to save the money because they don't want that EC2 machine should be running 24 cross 7. Okay, if you don't have any other option, this is your best solution. What? Just run a EC2 machine 24 cross 7 and it will pick up the file from S3 and it will put an file to output bucket. That's it. But now industry is moving. They are moving towards Lambda or any other options. So EMR is not a good option here because EMR is for big data processing, not small files. Okay. So this is the first option of EC2 machine should come in your mind. But let's explore other options. Container, I'm not going for container right now. It is again a one of the here you have to run the container 24 cross 7 or you have to integrate a uh, complex architecture. Now we have learned about Lambda. Lambda is a new version of EC2 machine where you don't have to manage the server. You don't have to manage a server, and Lambda will be terminated after 15 minutes, right? So similar project came to me, and a code which was running on EC2 machine or intent to run on EC2 machine, I try to run the same code in Lambda. Lambda support Python. Okay, great. Can run. It can take the file from S3 and it can process and put into output bucket. The only problem was the limitation of Lambda. What are the limitation of Lambda? That Lambda can run for 15 minutes and it used to have 2 GB memory. That's it. Previously, when I designed this project, that time Lambda used to have 2 GB of memory maximum. Now they are providing 10 GB, but previously Lambda was having up to 2 GB of RAM available. Now, as the client has given you the requirement, in the requirement it was mentioned that maximum file size will go up to 500 MB. I tested the same code in Lambda, so I replaced EC2 with Lambda. I replaced EC2 with Lambda, and I try to process the file with a 500 MB data. And to my surprise, Lambda processed the same file within 30 seconds and was able to utilize maximum 800 to 900 MB of the data, RAM. Okay, so same thing can be integrated in Lambda as well. You just has to test the worst case scenario, the maximum file size, and how much time it took. So I tested, I tested and I found out that the same file can be processed in Lambda within 30 seconds. That is the 15-minute timeout. I'm way within the 15 minutes timeout, and I have plenty amount of RAM also. So the out of memory issue will not happen. So that's where I, I thought of using Lambda. Now the only part was integrating S3 with Lambda and putting a file back to output bucket. So that's what Lambda came in picture. So I will show you the architect how we can process the Lambda. Otherwise, if Lambda is not, you are not able to integrate Lambda. So only thing about Lambda is you have to understand where to use Lambda. Can I use Lambda nowadays because Lambda is popular, getting popular? But you have to always remember the drawback of Lambda. Lambda timeout 15 minutes. It has a limited RAM available. Okay, if you are able to mitigate the solution using the limitation of Lambda within the limitations of Lambda, then it's great. That's what I told you. Industry, many codes, many companies are moving their code in Lambda. They are designing the system such a way that they don't want to run EC2 machine 24 cross 7. Now, the only thing was in EC2 machine there was one drawback that it is going to run one file at a time. Okay, if there are 100 file, the EC2 machine what it will do? It will pick one file at a time and it will process one by one. Now, advantage of Lambda is that I can spin n number of lambdas according to number of I can run n number of lambdas corresponding to number of files. That means if I have 10 files, I can integrate 10 lambda parallelly. Each lambda will process one file. That's it. So again, ये जो पूरा सॉल्यूशन था, आपको एक फाइल प्रोसेस करना है. फाइल प्रोसेस करना है मतलब आपको सीपीयू और रैम चाहिए. सो मैंने एक पाइथन का सिंपल कोड EC2 मशीन में बना दिया. नाउ टू सेव द मनी एंड टू मेक इट प्रोसेस पैरेलल, आई थॉट कि लैम्डा में एक बार इंटीग्रेट करके रखते हैं. ओके, if the file size would had been 5 GB, so this solution will not work. Why? Because the amount of time and the RAM required to process 5 GB file is not available with Lambda. Lambda के पास नहीं है. उस केस में मुझे EC2 पे ही जाना पड़ेगा. Okay, so check the limitation on Lambda, and if the limitation is not coming in your way, you can use Lambda easily. अगर कोई बोला 5 GB की फाइल प्रोसेस करनी है, यू कैन आस्क द क्लाइंट कैन यू ब्रेक दिस 5 GB फाइल इनटू 1 GB और स्मॉलर देन दैट। ऐसा कर सकते हैं ना क्लाइंट को, क्यों 5 GB की मंगानी है, तो आप लैम्डा में फिट कर सकते हो। अगर वो बोलता है नहीं मैं तो 5 GB की ही भेजूंगा, सो यू विल नॉट एबल टू यूज लैम्डा, बिकॉज लैम्डा विल टाइम आउट, 15 मिनट तक है वो मर जाएगा। ओके, this is the how we have to think how can we save the client money, because here you can see the moment the lambda will process the file, the lambda will be terminated और पैरेलल प्रोसेसिंग भी आ गया। आपको 24/7 EC2 मशीन रन करने की जरूरत नहीं है। क्यों? अगर मान लीजिए पूरे दिन में क्लाइंट 2 घंटे फाइल नहीं भेजता, तो भी आपका EC2 मशीन तो चालू ही रहेगा ना। ऐसा तो नहीं है कि वो 24 घंटे वर्क करता रहेगा, और आपको पता भी नहीं है कि फाइल कब भेजने वाला है, जिससे मैं EC2 मशीन शट डाउन करके रख दूं, कभी भी भेजेगा। और उसका एक रिक्वायरमेंट भी था, नियर रियल टाइम पे उसको करना है। सो दिस आर द ऑल प्रोसेस ऑफ सिलेक्टिंग द आर्किटेक्चर, क्रिएटिंग द आर्किटेक्चर। हमको क्लाइंट से इंफॉर्मेशन गैदर करना पड़ता है कि आपको क्या क्या करना है। ओके, नाउ दैट्स व्हाट द आर्किटेक्चर which I have designed. So you can see the client will send a file to S3 bucket. Now S3 bucket will be getting integrated with Lambda. कैसे करना है वो मैं बताता हूँ, how the S3 will get integrated, but there will be a Lambda. So now in this architecture we are going to use one of the S3 property where S3 will create a notification. Okay, S3 will create a notification whenever a file lands in S3, it will create a notification or it will create a trigger. We have seen that we can trigger the we can trigger S3 using we can trigger Lambda using S3. How? In S3 there is a feature called create a event. Okay, create a trigger. Whenever a new file is created, you can create a trigger and that trigger can be integrated with Lambda. So automatically वो Lambda code create कर देगा. So you don't have to worry about anything. Okay, as soon as the Lambda is triggered, it will get the file name, which file needs to be processed, and it will pick up the config file for your client, that particular client, which client has given you the detail about the columns needs to be deleted, and Lambda will delete that particular columns and it will put into the S3 bucket, that is the output bucket. Okay, now this process will take couple of seconds. Within a couple of seconds, according to file size, your process will be completed, and you don't have to worry about the timeline, because as soon as the file is arrive in S3, the moment client will send a file to S3, the Lambda will be triggered and they will process the file. So throughout the day, you don't have to worry, you don't have to create a server. It's a complete serverless solution. Okay, and just for my logging purpose or just for auditing purpose, I am going to store the information what files are being processed by Lambda. Okay, let's say in the future Lambda was not able to process out of 100 files, Lambda failed to process 2 files. Okay, to track that how many files are processed successfully or how many files are failed, I'm putting the information in Dynamo DB. Again, Dynamo DB is serverless. I don't have to pay a lot about in Dynamo DB. I'm using Dynamo DB as a logging purpose. Okay, this is architecture. Any question on this? So this is a Python code. You can use this code. Okay, I will just show you. I will just walk you through how the code works. It's a very simple code in Python. If you know the Python, you will quickly able to understand. If you don't know, then just bear with me. Okay, so this is a configuration area. Okay, if you have learned C++ or any other language, it again you can relate to it. So in the starting, I have imported the libraries, all the libraries which are required. Okay, if you have worked on other language, you might have know there is mathematical library, there are graph libraries. Here I'm importing the required libraries, datetime, IO, JSON, Boto, and other libraries. Okay, then I'm creating a client, or you can say the object for to connecting to S3 and connecting to DynamoDB. These are coming from AWS. It's a AWS library. I'm not doing anything uh, other than just calling this library provided by AWS. Now, this is the configuration which you might need to change. Okay, I will come to that what are the properties here we have to change. But apart from that, the whole code you don't have to touch. Have to just change the configuration here to run your code. Okay, now you might able to find the comments which I have done. Here I am reading the config file. So wherever the config file is there, you have to pass the config file information in the here. Okay, which config file I'm talking about? The config file in which there will be done the list of columns to be deleted. Okay, that file I'm reading, I'm fetching that which file, which headers needs to be deleted. Okay, then I'm reading the input file. Okay, I told you one lambda will read only one file. So that file name I'm fetching, in which bucket and what is the path of that file, right? Then I'm reading that file from S3. Then I'm comparing that file with the headers which needs to be deleted here in this section. You can see header list, and I'm dropping it from your file. Whatever the header list was available in the config file, I'm dropping that column or the column or the cell, and then I am writing the file back to S3, and I'm encrypting the file as well. Okay, encrypting the file as well while writing it. Okay, now I'm putting the information in DynamoDB if in the case of successful. Okay, so I'm putting the entry in DynamoDB. Lambda will put an entry with the file name. Okay, that this file is processed successfully. And if anything goes wrong, it will put a file as status as fail against the file. So this is a simple Python code. Now, do you have any question? If yes, let me know. If no, we can just go in the lab and create the code. Okay, this is a file processing in Lambda. So let's go to console. Now again, which component we are going to create first? We are going to create the component which are free end. So that is DynamoDB S3 buckets, three S3 buckets, and one DynamoDB. So let's go and create S3 bucket first. Okay, create a bucket in Mumbai. Yep. Input bucket. Okay, I'm creating one bucket name as input bucket. If the bucket name is available, it will create. I'm not doing any other thing. Yep, it's a simple input bucket. Similarly, I am creating an output bucket as well. Okay, input bucket, output bucket. Then we have a config bucket. config bucket. So I have created three buckets. In the input bucket, the client will upload the data, and in the config bucket, the client will send the config file. Okay, the config file. And in the output bucket, you have to put the output of the file. Okay, now the next part is creating the Dynamo DB. Go to Dynamo DB, click here and create a table. Okay, now the table name, you can create anything. I am creating a table name as serverless. This is here you can see configs file. Now what is the table name? I'm using serverless file processing. Serverless file processing status. Now tell me, what will be the primary key you should keep while creating the table? What should be the name of the primary key according to you? I have selected file name as my primary key because file name will be unique. Each file will have only one entry, either it's success or fail. Okay, that's it. And I'm just saving it. So remember, the file, the primary key and the table name should be is very important. If you are changing the table name, you have to update in this file in your code. If you're not changing a table name, then it's good, right? Now you can see table name. Then we created a table DynamoDB table information. Then config file bucket name. Config file bucket. So you have to give the config file here. So config file bucket name. This. Just copy it and inside the code you have to paste your config file bucket name. Then key as it is destination bucket. Destination bucket name. That is your output bucket. So whatever the name you are giving, you have to use the same thing. Output bucket December 2023. So this is config bucket. This is your output bucket. We don't have to provide input bucket because it will be passed from S3 itself. Okay. Only these things you have to change. Copy complete things and we will paste in Lambda. Now you can see we have created three S3 bucket. We have created Dynamo DB. We are ready with the code. We just has to create a Lambda. We just has to create a Lambda. So for Lambda, I require an IAM role. First of all, I will create a role for Lambda. Now, what is Lambda doing? Lambda is reading the file from S3 and it is writing the file in another S3 bucket. That means I require S3 access. Second, it is writing in DynamoDB. I need DynamoDB access. And for logging purpose, I'm going to use CloudWatch. So create a role for my Lambda. My Lambda needs permissions. Which permission? S3 permission. So I'm giving S3 full access, DynamoDB full access, okay, and CloudWatch. Why CloudWatch? To write the uh, for logging purpose. CloudWatch full access. Okay, click next. Give a name. Serverless Lambda role. Okay, you can just check it out. DynamoDB S3 and CloudWatch full access. Create the role. Done. You can just check it out. The role is present. Now just let's go to Lambda. Okay. So create a function. Now just check your S3 bucket, doesn't matter, but your Dynamo DB and Lambda should be in the same region. Okay. Give a name to your Lambda, serverless file processing Lambda. Which language I'm using? I'm using Python. You can select the version accordingly. In the advanced, in the change the default role, just select your existing role. So you will find serverless Lambda role. Serverless Lambda role. Okay, in advanced settings, I'm not doing any changes. Just create a Lambda. Okay, your Lambda, and here you have to write a code. Simple. My code is ready with me. So just Control A, select all, copy, delete this code, previous code, and paste it here. This is a editor Amazon has provided you. You can write the code directly here. Okay, so I just copy paste the code. I will check the DynamoDB name. DynamoDB name is same. Config bucket, output bucket. All good. And just save it. I'm just refreshing it one time and save it. Sometime you will get an, if you're getting an error, just refresh it, refresh the page, and then try to save it. Okay, this is the button to save. Deploy means save in Lambda. If you are doing any changes, you have to save it. So your Lambda is ready right now. Till this point, your Lambda is ready. Only part is remaining is integrated with your bucket. As soon as the file lands, that file should be sent to Lambda. Okay, that part is remaining. So go to your S3 bucket, input bucket. Here you can see input. This is go to your property. Here is you can see create event notification. Okay, what type of notification we are talking about? If you click here, you can see a object is created. Create a notification. Create a trigger, and where the destination will be, you can see AWS has given directly. You can send the information to Lambda. That means if any file is created in S3 bucket, somebody puts a file, you can send that information, the metadata, the file name, or some information about the file to directly to Lambda. Okay, so I'm giving name, serverless file processing, keep prefix suffix as it is, all the object which are created. Okay, all the object which are created. Create object means if anybody is writing a file in your S3 bucket, that time the event should be triggered and it should be sent to your Lambda. Which Lambda? You can see here you will find your Lambda name. Here you will find your Lambda name. Save it. Now we have indicated your S3 as well. So anyone put a file in S3, it will send to your Lambda. So this is we are done. Now just do we have to test the code if everything is working fine or not. So if you go to flight here in your folder, you will find out all the files which you need to process. So let's open one, upload one file. So let's upload. So I'm uploading a file in S3 bucket. I'm just uploading. So I have uploaded the file in my input bucket. That means it should trigger the Lambda. Lambda should pick up the file. It will should pick up the config, and if everything goes fine, it should write a code in output bucket and should update the DynamoDB as well. So let's check in DynamoDB if I gotten any entry or not. No, I didn't got an entry in DynamoDB. Okay, let's go and check in output bucket. Did I receive the file or not? No, I didn't receive the file. That means something is not proper. Let's check. Let me check if Dan Lambda triggered or not. Okay, I didn't. I uploaded a file, but that file didn't process. There is no entry in DynamoDB. There is no entry in output bucket. So let's go and check in monitoring in CloudWatch. In your Lambda, there is a option called monitoring, and you can check on CloudWatch. So CloudWatch will give you the information about Lambda. We have integrated Lambda with CloudWatch as well right now. So you can see it has created logs. यहाँ पे Lambda ने logs create के रखे हैं. If you click here, you will find the error. Hmm. Now you can see if you check here runtime issue, or you can see here Lambda timeout. It should get an error. Okay. Now no such key when calling the get of this. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me check. But here, if you check properly, socket timeout, unknown error, unknown error. Here, if you check, yeah, timeout. I was searching this. Task timeout after 3 seconds. Task timeout after 3 seconds. Why 3 seconds? If you go to Lambda, if you go to the config of Lambda, by default your Lambda is configured for 3 seconds. We have to change this from 3 seconds to 15 seconds. It should work. Mean we should configure that it should go up to 15 seconds, 15 minutes. And the memory, you should give it to at least 2 GB. Your Lambda memory should be up to 2 GB. You have to change these two properties and save it. Okay, and you can even change the temporary storage in Lambda, but not required here. Okay, so I have changed the time up to 15 minutes and memory up to 2 GB. Now let me upload the data again. This was the error. Why? The Lambda timeout was set to default 3 seconds. Let me delete the file from input and upload again. Upload. Upload the file, and okay. Now again I have uploaded a file of 5 MB, nearly 4.8 MB, the 5 MB. Let's go in DynamoDB, check again. Did you got the entry? No. In output bucket, let me check if the output bucket any entry was created, file was created. No. Okay, so again I have to check the CloudWatch. Go to CloudWatch, you will find an entry, another entry. Okay, I can check the problem here. Now what's this issue? Ah, We forgot to upload a config file, config bucket. Okay, we forgot to upload the config file. Let me upload config file as well. That was the error, that it was not able to find the config file. Okay. Okay. So in CloudWatch, you can find the errors if you are facing some issue. So let me upload the input file again. File in input folder, bucket, upload. Okay. So these are the small errors generally we do. Now you can see in Dynamo DB, I got an entry. The file is processed successfully. Now if you check right now, the input file is 4.8 MB. And the output file, if you go here, it is 4.1. And you can check, you download the file and you can check if the data is deleted from the file or not. Okay. So let me show you. So if the data is deleted or not. Let's open the file. Now what are the columns I need to delete? Previously tail number was present. Let me check if the tail number is present in the file or not. Cannot find the particular key. So this complete column was dropped. Cancellation number, reason. No. So that columns are dropped. And you can see the file size as well. Previously it was 4.8 MB. Now it is 4.1. That means some data is deleted. Now your code is working, your system is working. So as soon as you're uploading a file, you are able to process it. So let me upload do one thing. Let me upload 5 files together. Let me delete this file from input folder. Let me delete the file from output folder as well. Let me clear everything. And I'm going to upload 5 files, all the files together. What will happen? Let me delete the entry as well. Okay. Let's go to input folder. Upload all the files together. Upload. Okay, you can drag and drop or you can just select the files. You can see here I am uploading 6 files. File number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a output file which doesn't contain any data. It is a corrupt file. You know, I'm uploading a corrupt file, blank file, right? Let's see what happened. Upload. Okay. Now I have uploaded 6 files. If I go to output, you can see I have received 5 files. One file was missing. I uploaded 6. If I go to Dynamo DB and refresh, you can see status file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are processed successfully, but output file failed. So, okay, to track the failure, I am using Dynamo DB. Okay, so I can just filter out, I can just find out which file failed today. Okay, and in the output, I am receiving all the file. That means parallelly, file and Lambda worked parallelly, and each Lambda pick up one file and it processed it. And you can see the timing, how fast the Lambda is working. This is all about your serverless application or serverless file processing. This is how the Lambda work. So basically Lambda is a small version of EC2 machine which can process your data, which can process or do some activity for you within a time limit. If you check the logs, if you go to your Lambda, go to monitoring. Okay, after some time, it will give you some information. You can see the average time it is taking 3 seconds. Okay, you can find the information here. Okay, it will take 5 to 10 minutes to populate this graph, so you can monitor that how much amount of time a lambda is taking, what is the memory it is utilizing, or even in the logs you will find out. You can see it took nearly duration 4 millisecond, 400 millisecond, less than 1 minute seconds to process the file. Okay, in the summary you will find that duration, how much memory it has utilized. It has utilized 100 MB. That's it. So this is a report for each lambda. Each lambda is creating its own report. Okay, so this is how we are using lambda to create serverless application. Now the advantage is that you have created the lambda, you have created the end-to-end everything, but you don't have to uh, delete after creating. Means you can leave the lambda. The lambda will only trigger if the file came in S3, right? You can keep everything as it is. You don't have to delete it. Nothing is running 24 cross 7. The lambda will trigger only if the file comes to S3 and it will process it. Otherwise, it is as it is. So you are not paying anything. Even for Dynamo DB, it's a serverless. Any question? So I have, this is your serverless application.